Your friends said that the poor boy would never be able to fulfill his dream of being a singer until the day of his performance, when he did it. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching the video from. We love getting to know our viewers. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more exciting stories. Enjoy the story and see you soon. Miguel never forgot the sound of the laughter that haunted him as he stepped onto the stage, his shy eyes glancing at the audience full of mocking children. They laughed at his father's worn clothes, the scuffed boots he wore because there was no money for new ones. Beside him, his mother Amalia, with a face marked by struggle, gave him a forced smile, knowing he had the talent but not the support he deserved. In the back, his father João was battling a deep cough that wouldn't give him rest, but he still tried to clap for his son, even though his strength was fading. He knew what it meant to be invisible, to be the skinny, unkempt boy who seemed to dream too big for his situation. But there, in that moment, Miguel felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. His town, Villa Esperanza, was small but full of crushed hopes. Every corner told a story of surrender. But he didn't want to be just another erased character. He wanted to be someone who could change his own story and his family's story. "Go, Miguel!" shouted Carlos, one of the few friends he had, but even he seemed to doubt. Everyone seemed to doubt. The children laughed, already knowing what to expect. A skinny boy with dreams of being a singer, they had no patience for small dreams. Miguel's heart pounded. Rodrigo, the most popular boy at school, was already waiting for his turn, wearing an arrogant smile. Rodrigo had always known he would be the leader, the talented one, the golden boy. He approached Miguel before he went on stage and whispered mockingly, "I hope your voice is better than that outfit, Miguel. You'll be the clown of the night." Miguel felt his blood boil, but Rodrigo's words didn't affect him as much as the reality he had to face. He wanted to cry, he wanted to disappear, but in that instant, something inside him stirred. He wasn't there to please Rodrigo. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He just wanted to sing, and to do that, he had to believe in himself. With one last look at his mother and father, Miguel took his position. Mr. Alfredo, the retired singer who was in town for a visit, watched from afar. He knew the harshness of life, the pain of being left behind, but there was something in the way the boy breathed before he sang, as if preparing to face the impossible. Isabel, a woman Miguel had never seen before, stood in the crowd, watching him closely with an enigmatic expression, as if she already knew what was about to happen. The silence of the square lingered for an eternal moment before Miguel took his first step. He wasn't there to prove anything to anyone, but to fulfill a dream that seemed bigger than himself. And with that confidence, he opened his mouth, releasing a deep and powerful voice that left everyone paralyzed. He wasn't singing just for his town. He was singing for his family, for his parents who had suffered so much. He sang for the life he dreamed of, a life where he wouldn't be the poor and invisible boy anymore. Miguel sang to exist. The song he sang on that stage was more than a melody. It carried the pain, the struggle, and the flame of an impossible dream. When the last note was reached, no one knew what to think. The audience stood in complete silence. Some were stunned. Others moved. And the strangest thing of all, no one was laughing anymore. Miguel had not been the clown of the night. He had been the hero of his own story. But in the audience, no one knew yet that the man who could change his life the most was there. Mr. Alfredo, the renowned singer who had retired from the big stages, stared intently at the boy, his eyes gleaming with a rare kind of recognition. There was something in the way Miguel sang, something that could not be ignored. And at that moment, Alfredo decided he would be the one to take that boy out of the darkness and put him where he belonged. Music wasn't just Miguel's passion. It was the only thing he had to hold on to. And if he wanted to be more than what the town said he was, he would need more than talent. He would need a chance. And it was about to arrive. The square still vibrated with the echoes of Miguel's performance, but he couldn't hear anything but his own rapid heartbeat. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but he felt the weight of change with every step he took as he left the stage. People approached, trying to congratulate him, but Miguel's mind was distant, lost in a whirlwind of emotions. Then someone touched his shoulder. "You have a rare voice, kid." Miguel quickly turned, finding a tired-looking man, but with an imposing presence. The man seemed to be the same age as his father, but his eyes were alive and alert. Mr. Alfredo was a name Miguel had heard of, but he never imagined he would be there, speaking directly to him. I don't know what to say," Miguel stammered, unsure if he should feel fear or gratitude. "You don't need to say anything, Miguel," Alfredo said with a calm smile. "What you did up there wasn't just singing. You put your soul into it, something that, unfortunately, few people manage." Miguel was in shock, but curiosity and disbelief took over him. You're serious?" "Yes, and that's why I'm here. I've been following your town for some time, and I know what life has given you. I know how hard it is to fight with your hands tied, but you have something that few people have, a talent that, if handled correctly, can change your life." Alfredo paused, scrutinizing Miguel with critical eyes. "I want you to come with me. I want you to let me train you." Miguel blinked a few times, trying to process what was happening. He didn't know if he was dreaming or if this was real. The man standing before him was a legend, someone who had reached the top of fame and had the power to transform anyone's life. But the thought of leaving Villa Esperanza and facing the unknown terrified him. He looked at his mother and father, still in the audience, their worried eyes seeming to ask him to make the right decision. I don't have money to go," Miguel murmured, his voice faltering. Alfredo chuckled softly, and with a simple gesture pulled a wallet from his pocket and opened it, showing Miguel an old photo of a brightly lit stage with hundreds of fans shouting his name. "You don't need money, Miguel. What you need is to believe in yourself, and believe me, you can pay for it later, with your talent." Miguel hesitated, but the shine in Alfredo's eyes was something he couldn't ignore. There, before him, was the chance of a lifetime. The chance to no longer be the poor boy from the town, to not have to worry about how to feed his parents or whether he could give them a better future. But there was a shadow over the decision. He knew that by accepting Alfredo's offer, he would have to leave his town, his family. He didn't know for how long. And with his parents sick and his mother's life getting harder, Miguel wasn't sure if he should follow his dream or stay by their side, as he always had. Alfredo noticed the doubt. He placed a hand on Miguel's shoulder and said, "Don't worry about that now. I'll take you to a place where you can learn, but you have to promise me one thing. When you return, you'll be the Miguel you've always dreamed of being, not the poor boy, the singer." Alfredo's words echoed in Miguel's mind, and he finally nodded, a sense of relief mixed with an inexplicable anguish. He knew that this decision would change everything. He was taking a leap into the unknown, into a future he had only dared to dream of until that moment. "I will," Miguel replied firmly. "I will, Mr. Alfredo." The offer was made, and Miguel knew that although his journey was just beginning, nothing would ever be the same. He was no longer just fighting for his own survival, but for something greater, the chance to change his life, the life of his parents, and maybe, just maybe, the life of the entire city of Villa Esperanza. But this decision, contrary to what he imagined, would not be easy. And not everything he would find alongside Alfredo would be as simple as it seemed. Miguel didn't know what to expect when he got into Mr. Alfredo's car that cold winter morning. All he knew was that With the man who had changed his life, he would leave Villa Esperanza behind, at least for a while. His heart was racing as the car drove through the lonely roads, and the feeling of heading toward something grand mixed with the fear of the unknown. He looked out the window, watching the city disappear in the distance. Villa Esperanza was all he knew. He wondered what his mother and father were doing now, if they still missed him. The guilt consumed him, but he knew that by accepting this opportunity, he wasn't just doing something for himself. He was doing it for them too, to give them a better future, a future where he was no longer the burden they carried. The sound of the car's engine was the only thing filling the silence between Miguel and Alfredo. The old singer didn't seem in a hurry to speak, but Miguel could feel Alfredo's eyes on him, as if he were measuring each moment. "I don't understand how life can be so hard on some people." Miguel broke the silence, trying to understand why he, so young, was there, not knowing what awaited him. "I just want my mom and dad to be okay. They've done so much for me." Alfredo sighed before answering, in a deep and soft voice. "Do you think it's easy for anyone, Miguel? Do you think anyone can achieve what you're trying to achieve? Life is unfair, my friend, but it's also full of opportunities for those who know how to seize them. The question is, who do you want to be when all is said and done? And I see something in you, something that you don't even know yet." Miguel didn't answer. He knew Alfredo was right, but the truth was that inside he felt small. He felt like he wasn't prepared for what was to come. When they finally arrived in Serra Azul, a small village far away, everything seemed different. The place was surrounded by mountains and simple houses, but the fresh, clean air seemed to promise something new. Mr. Alfredo took Miguel to his house, an old but well-kept building. It was here that he would spend the next few months, learning to sing, but also facing his own demons. "This is your new home for now," Alfredo said, after showing him the small room where Miguel would sleep. "Here, you will learn what music really means. It's not just about technique or hitting the right notes, it's about feeling the music in every fiber of your body." Miguel looked around, a bit confused but also fascinated. The place was simple, with no luxury at all, but it had something welcoming. Maybe it was Alfredo's presence, or the fact that he knew that here was his chance to change everything. But what he didn't know was that Alfredo's training wouldn't just be about his voice. In the following days, Miguel found himself immersed in an intense regimen of lessons, where vocal technique was only part of the process. Alfredo made him face his own fears, confront his insecurities, and work on his confidence. With each mistake, Alfredo seemed to demand more, pushing Miguel beyond his limits, making him sing until his vocal cords hurt. But it was in the moments of extreme fatigue that Miguel began to see his own evolution. His voice, once so simple and uncontrollable, now started to gain strength and control. He felt that something was changing inside him. But the transformation wasn't only happening on stage. Alfredo knew that Miguel needed to learn to be someone beyond the boy he had always been. Music comes from within you, Miguel. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest with yourself. When you sing, I want you to feel every word. You sing with your body, but it's your soul that matters. Each day, Miguel found himself more immersed in training, but also in solitude. He missed his mother, the late-night conversations with João, knowing that at the end of the day there would be someone to hug him. The letters he sent home brought short responses, always with words of encouragement, but he knew that his mother missed him as much as he missed her. Once again, guilt gnawed at him. Is it worth it? Miguel wondered, looking at himself in the mirror in the small room where he prepared for training. But deep down, he knew this was his only chance to change his life and the life of his parents. He couldn't give up now. The clock showed it was well into the night when Alfredo entered his room, looking more serious than ever. "Miguel, you need to be ready for the next step. Be prepared. Your real battle starts now." Miguel felt the weight of the words. The next step. He knew the road would still be tough and nothing would be easy, but in that moment, he also knew that no matter what happened, he wouldn't turn back. The journey had just begun. Miguel was starting to feel that the training with Alfredo, although challenging, was finally beginning to bear fruit. With each lesson, he felt stronger, more capable, and his voice, once shaky and insecure, now resonated with power and emotion. But he wasn't prepared for what would happen that day. It was a quiet afternoon in Serra Azul, and Miguel was practicing his vocal routine when the door to Alfredo's house opened. He wasn't expecting visitors, and when he looked toward the gate, he saw a woman with dark hair and an enigmatic look approaching. She had an elegant posture, but she seemed weighed down by a certain melancholy. She was no ordinary person. "Good morning, Alfredo," the woman said, with a discreet but warm smile. Alfredo stood up from where he was sitting, and upon seeing who was approaching, his eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and something more, perhaps nostalgia or even regret. "Miguel, this is Isabel," Alfredo announced in a tone that Miguel couldn't fully understand. "She came from a distant city to pay us a visit." Miguel observed Isabel, a little suspicious but also intrigued. She seemed to be more than just a simple visitor. Something in her posture, something in her gaze, seemed to carry secrets she wasn't ready to reveal. As if her presence there was more than just a mere coincidence. "Hello, Miguel," Isabel said with a gentle smile, but her eyes were filled with a deep wisdom, something Miguel couldn't decipher. "You must be the young man Alfredo talks so much about. I heard your performance at the Festa das Estações. Impressive." Miguel was speechless. He had never imagined that a woman like Isabel would be in his life with that aura of mystery surrounding her. "You already have a lot of talent, Miguel," Isabel continued, watching him with an intensity that seemed to search his soul. "But what Alfredo hasn't told you yet is that at some point you'll need something more, something beyond vocal technique." Miguel frowned, not understanding. "Something more?" Isabel smiled enigmatically. "Yes. But for now, just know that the challenges you'll face are greater than you imagine. It's not just the music that will test you. It's your choices, your emotions, your story." Miguel felt a chill run down his spine. What did Isabel mean by that? He looked at Alfredo, searching for an answer, but Alfredo remained silent, as if he knew more than he was willing to reveal. "I am a friend of your mother's, Miguel," Isabel finally said, breaking the silence. "She and I had a past related to music, and I'm here because I believe I can help you take the next step in your journey, but that will only be possible if you trust me." Miguel was stunned. His mother, he had never known that his mother had any involvement in music beyond singing to him when he was a child. She always spoke very little about the past, and he had never had the courage to ask. Why was Isabel talking about this now? "My mother, she doesn't talk much about the past," Miguel murmured, unsure of what to think. Isabel gave a sad smile. "It's a story she chose to leave behind, Miguel. But perhaps it's time for you to discover what she didn't want to tell you." That moment stayed etched in Miguel's mind. He didn't know what it meant, but he felt that something was about to be revealed, something that could change everything he knew about his family. But at that instant, he couldn't afford distractions. He had a goal, and he knew he would need all his strength to face it. "Are we going to start the training?" Miguel asked, trying to understand Isabel's role there. "No, my young friend. I'm not a vocal coach. My job is to help refine something else in you, something you haven't realized yet, but will be essential in your journey." She glanced at Alfredo, who remained silent, as if she was the one who needed to speak. Miguel was confused, but Isabel's look suggested that there was more behind her words. Something hidden, like a secret that refused to be fully told. But he knew that as much as the idea of a new mentor was appealing, the truth was that he still had so much to learn. He didn't have time for questions, at least not for now. The only thing that mattered was the stage, the music, the future. "Then, let's begin the training," Miguel said, trying to focus. Isabel made a subtle gesture, as if signaling something beyond words, and left, leaving Miguel and Alfredo alone again. "Don't worry about Isabel right now, Miguel," Alfredo said, breaking the silence. "She has her way of helping. But for now, focus on your training. The next step is difficult. It will test everything you've learned so far." Miguel nodded, with a feeling that by accepting that help, he was drawing closer to something much bigger and more complex than he had imagined. He didn't know what the future held, but as he looked to the distant horizon, he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change forever. The days in Serra Azul were becoming more intense with each passing week. Miguel was becoming increasingly focused on his training with Mr. Alfredo, but something inside him was restless. Isabel's presence had stirred him in a way he couldn't fully understand. Every word she spoke seemed to hide a secret, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that his mother, Amalia, had a past he had never imagined. One morning, as he was preparing for another vocal practice, Miguel couldn't help but overhear a conversation between Isabel and Alfredo. He was trying to rehearse, but their words floated through the air, reaching his ears despite his efforts to block them out. "She doesn't know, Alfredo," Isabel was saying, her voice tense. "She doesn't even know half of what her mother did, what she sacrificed. Amalia was a star, but she faded away to save Miguel from a fate he can't even imagine." Miguel froze, not knowing what to do. Amalia, a star. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mother had always told him that her past was simple, with no great events. All he knew was that she had sung in her youth, but never, ever had she mentioned anything so grand. Why keep this from him? He moved closer to the door, but before he could hear more, Alfredo interrupted the conversation. "Let him discover it in his own time, Isabel. None of this will matter if he's not ready." Miguel quickly stepped back, his heart pounding. What did Alfredo mean by that? And what did Isabel know about his mother? He could no longer ignore what was happening. Something was very wrong, and he needed to uncover the truth. Determined to learn more, Miguel began asking discreet questions. He had heard about an old photo album stored in the attic of Amalia's house. Maybe there was a clue there to help him understand what had happened. That night, he went up to the attic and began searching. The place was dusty and full of old boxes, but he didn't stop until he found what he was looking for, a wooden box with a yellowed photo on the lid. Upon opening the box, Miguel found several old newspaper clippings and pictures of his mother when she was younger. In some of them, she was on stage, wearing sparkling dresses with a radiant smile. But what really caught his attention was a newspaper article dated many years ago. The headline read, "Amalia Silva, the voice that enchanted the nation." Miguel felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. His mother, a star? He began reading the article, which spoke of a young singer who had been considered a rising star in the music scene. But the article also mentioned something Miguel had never imagined. Amalia had been forced to abandon her career after a scandal involving her family. According to the article, Amalia had to give up her dream to protect her brother, who had become involved in serious drug problems. The pain of the decision was evident in the words of the article. Miguel was overwhelmed with emotions. The woman he had always known as simple and humble had been one of the greatest voices of her generation, but her career had been destroyed by something she had never told him. He wanted to scream, to ask, to demand answers, but at the same time he felt a deep compassion for her. He had never known the weight she had carried. Miguel's mind was in turmoil. If Amalia had been a star, why had she never told him? And why was Isabel saying that his mother faded away to protect him? He knew he had to confront his mother, but he also knew it would be a difficult conversation, full of emotions. When night fell, Miguel couldn't sleep. He thought about everything he had discovered and Isabel's words. Your mother faded away to save you from a destiny you can't even imagine. What did this mean? Was it possible that she had given up something so big for him? And more importantly, was it possible that Miguel was destined for something even greater, something that connected his music to his mother's fate? The next morning, as he went downstairs for breakfast, Miguel saw Amalia in the kitchen. She was preparing lunch as always, with a welcoming smile. But something inside him wanted to ask, wanted to demand the truth. "Mum, there's something I need to know," he said, his voice trembling. Amalia paused for a moment, her gaze drifting to the side. She knew her son had discovered something. She knew the truth could no longer be hidden. "Miguel," she began, her voice soft, "there are things in my life that are hard to tell, and even harder to relive, but maybe it's time for you to know truly who I was." Miguel felt the weight of her words, knowing that the truth he had been searching for was about to be revealed. But he wasn't scared anymore. He was ready. Miguel sat at the kitchen table, his heart pounding. He knew this was the defining moment, the moment when he would finally learn everything his mother had hidden for so long. Amalia stood by the table, her hands trembling, almost as if she knew there was no turning back. The secret was about to be unveiled. "Do you want to know about my past, Miguel?" Amalia asked, her voice calm but heavy with a silent weight. "About why I never spoke about my career? About why you never knew what I did before I became your mother?" Miguel nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He knew what she was about to say wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to hear it. "I was young, very young when I started. And music was everything to me. I had a voice people said was unique. Everyone said I would be the next big star in music. I sang in grand theaters, on packed stages, and the lights shone on me in a way I never imagined possible." Amalia paused, looking out the window as if reliving those times. Miguel was in shock. He never imagined his mother had been that young woman, full of dreams and ambitions. He had always known her as the woman who loved and protected him, not as a star. And what disturbed him even more was the sight of her, now older, speaking of something so grand with so much pain. But then, things started to fall apart. I had a brother, Felipe. He was much younger than me, but always troubled. He got involved with drugs and made many wrong choices. One day, after an important show, he did something that destroyed everything. He was arrested. And at that moment, I had to choose, pursue my career or save my family. Miguel shivered. He had never imagined that Felipe, the uncle he knew so little about, had been the reason his mother gave up everything. He couldn't imagine the pain she must have felt. I didn't hesitate, Miguel. I left music behind. I knew that if it wasn't for me, our family wouldn't have another chance, and all I wanted, more than any stage, was to protect you. That's why I never talked about it. I wanted you to have a different life, without knowing the burden I carried. Amalia said, tears in her eyes, though she tried to keep her voice steady. Miguel was silent, absorbing his mother's words. He had so many questions, so many conflicting emotions, but at the same time, he felt an immense gratitude. His mother had given up her own dream to ensure he had a chance at happiness. I didn't know any of this, Mom, Miguel finally said, his voice choked. I never knew how much you suffered to give me this life. Amalia smiled gently, wiping away a tear that had fallen from her face. "I never wanted you to know, Miguel, but maybe now is the time. Maybe if you follow this dream, you can achieve something I never could. You have something I never had, time, and you have the power to create your own story." Miguel stood up and embraced his mother tightly. He felt as if he had discovered a new part of her, something he had never imagined. He had always known his mother was strong, but now he knew that her strength came from a deep pain, from an immense sacrifice she made for him. "I promise, Mom, I will do this for both of us. I will achieve what you couldn't." Amalia looked at Miguel with a proud smile. "I know you can. I always knew you had something special." When Miguel pulled away, a new and powerful feeling took over him. He felt like his journey was taking a different path now. He wasn't alone anymore, and the weight of his mother's past had become fuel for his determination. He didn't just want to become a great singer now. He wanted to honor the sacrifice his mother made. He wanted to honor his Uncle Felipe's memory as well, and everything his mother lost because of him. But Miguel's destiny was far from simple. The path ahead was still filled with obstacles. His greatest rival, Rodrigo, was becoming a shadow in his life, always trying to make Miguel feel inferior, always trying to destabilize him. And beyond that, there were the expectations that Miguel was beginning to place on himself. He knew he could no longer fail. His mother had already lost everything for him, and now he had to be stronger than ever. Miguel's music now carried the weight of love and responsibility, and he knew that sooner or later he would have to face not only the challenges of the stage, but the ghosts of the past, his own and his family's. Miguel stood on stage, looking out at the audience full of curious faces. His breath was quick and sweat trickled down his forehead. It wasn't the first time he had performed, but the weight of the expectations, of his family, of his own dream, never felt so great. The song he was about to sing wasn't just a performance. It was the expression of everything he carried inside him, his mother's sacrifices, the struggles he was still facing, and the promise he made to her to be great. The event was the annual music competition, where talents from all over the region gathered to compete for a contract with a renowned record label. The opportunity was unique, and all eyes were on that stage. Rodrigo, his greatest rival, was performing right before him, and Miguel knew the arrogant young man was doing everything he could to unsettle him. Rodrigo always tried to destabilize him, taking advantage of Miguel's insecurities, the difficulties he carried. As Rodrigo climbed onto the stage and began his performance, Miguel could feel the poison in every word of his rival. The way Rodrigo looked at him with that superior smile only fueled Miguel's anger. Rodrigo was good, very good, but his arrogance made everything harder. "Rodrigo has everything you don't, Miguel," Miguel thought, "but I won't let him beat me." He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to focus on the music, on what truly mattered. He knew his only chance was to fully surrender to the song, without worrying about the provocations. Rodrigo sang with an unbeatable stage presence, but something in Miguel's voice told him he had something different, something more authentic, something that couldn't be taught. However, the problem wasn't in his talent, but in the internal pressure he felt. The fear of failing, the doubt about whether he was making the right choice, and the constant comparison to Rodrigo was swallowing him. When it was Miguel's turn, he stepped onto the stage with his mind full of conflicting emotions. He looked at the audience, saw his mother's face in the front row, and felt he couldn't fail. Amalia was there, her gaze filled with expectation. Miguel's heart raced, but at the same time, he knew music was his only chance to truly communicate with the world. He closed his eyes, took a step forward, and began to sing. The song he chose wasn't just any song. It was a song that expressed the pain and hope of his life, a song that touched the very depths of his being. Each note, each word, felt like the answer to everything he had lived. As his voice echoed through the hall, he felt the magic take over him. The audience, once scattered, was now hypnotized. But there was something different about that moment. When Miguel sang the last verse, he felt a strange sensation. The music wasn't just coming from him. It seemed as though he was being guided by a higher power. He could see the expression on his mother's face in the audience, and in her eyes there was immense pride, but also a deep sadness. When the last note sounded, there was silence in the room. Miguel opened his eyes, feeling vulnerable, unsure of how the audience would react. What he didn't expect was the immediate reaction. The audience was on their feet, applauding loudly. Rodrigo, who had been watching from the side, stood frozen, with an expression that mixed surprise and frustration. Miguel felt a warmth in his chest. He had given it his all, and the music had finally set him free. But the applause, though welcoming, couldn't ease the weight he still carried. He knew that this wouldn't be the end of his journey, but just another obstacle overcome. As he stepped off the stage, he was approached by Rodrigo, who didn't hide his irritation. "You got lucky, Miguel, but I'm still better than you. I just can't let you think you're something you're not." Miguel didn't answer immediately. He looked at Rodrigo, calm yet determined. "You can have everything, Rodrigo, but there's something you'll never understand. I sing with my heart." Rodrigo scoffed, turning his back, but Miguel knew that despite his rival's arrogance, he was winning. Not because he had won the competition, but because he had overcome his own fears and limitations. He wasn't singing to defeat Rodrigo, he was singing for himself. As he prepared to leave the venue, he found Isabel, who had been following the competition. She approached him with a mysterious smile. "I saw what you did there, Miguel. You have something rare, something that goes far beyond music." Miguel looked at her, curious. "Do you really think so? I still don't know if I'm good enough." Isabel gave a slight smile. "You don't need to be good enough for others, Miguel. You just need to be good enough for yourself." And as he reflected on her words, Miguel felt he was closer than ever to achieving what he had always dreamed of. But he knew the road ahead was still full of challenges, and that Rodrigo was just the first of them. The real battle was just beginning. Miguel was sitting on a park bench, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The victory in the music competition still echoed in his mind, but something inside him felt empty. He had given his best, but he knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The pressure increased every day, and the shadow of his past seemed impossible to ignore. The feeling of guilt for not doing more for his mother and his father, João, weighed heavily on his heart. Since Amalia began revealing the secrets of her youth and her struggles, Miguel felt more determined than ever. But there was a growing concern. His father, João, was getting worse every day. João's heart disease, which had already left him weak in recent months, was rapidly advancing. Miguel tried to stay strong, but every time he saw his father weaker, sadder, the weight of responsibility grew. That day, when he returned home after the competition, Miguel found Amalia in the kitchen, staring at a piece of paper. She didn't look up when he entered, and Miguel immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Mom, what happened?" Miguel asked, concern overflowing in his voice. Amalia looked up, her expression tired. "Miguel, your father, the doctor said his condition has worsened. He doesn't have much time left." Miguel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He knew his father was sick, but hearing those words from his mother made everything feel even more real and painful. The man, who had always been the rock of his life, was now disintegrating before his eyes. He ran to João's room, finding him lying on the bed, weak and pale, almost unrecognizable. The usual smile was no longer there. João lifted his head slowly, and when he saw Miguel, he forced a weak smile. "My son, I saw your performance. You were Amazing. I always knew you had something special. João's voice was weak, almost imperceptible. Miguel sat by the bed, taking his father's hand. "Dad, don't say that. You're going to get better. We'll find a way. I'm starting to succeed. I'll pay for the doctors. Do whatever is necessary." João closed his eyes for a moment, as if processing his son's words. "Miguel, you've already given me everything I could ask for. The only thing I want now is to see you achieve your dreams. No matter how much I want to be here to see you, you already have everything inside you." Those words pierced Miguel like a knife. He already knew his father was saying goodbye, but hearing it from the man he loved most hurt more than anything. The next day was a whirlwind of emotions. The family received the news that João's health had drastically worsened. The doctor said he wouldn't survive the night, and Miguel knew he was facing a farewell that he never imagined would come so soon. That night, Miguel stayed by his father's side. Amalia, though visibly shaken, couldn't help but worry about Miguel. "Son, I know this is so hard for you, but you have to keep going. Your father, he knew what you meant to him, and he never wanted you to stop fighting." Miguel squeezed his mother's hand, feeling weak, unable to find words to express the pain he felt. He looked at João, already unconscious, and felt that the emptiness growing inside him was greater than he had ever imagined. Hours later, the early morning came with the news that João had passed away. Miguel felt as though his heart had been ripped from his chest. He wanted to scream, to protest against that cruel fate, but nothing could bring his father back. The funeral was simple, but the emptiness in Miguel's life was immeasurable. He felt that a piece of himself had gone with the man who had always believed in him. His father, João, would never see his career as a singer take off, would never see the life Miguel was beginning to build. After the funeral, Miguel retreated to his room. He looked at the guitar his mother had kept as a relic, a legacy from a time when he dreamed of music. It was there, in that deep silence, that he made a decision. "I'm going to do this for you, Dad. I'll do this for both of us." Miguel knew the pain of loss would never fade, but now he carried within him a strength he had never imagined he possessed. He stood up and picked up the guitar. His voice trembled, but he sang. He sang with all his heart. He knew that music would be his only way of connecting with the father he had just lost. "Now, there's no turning back," he thought. "I'm doing this not just for me, but for my dad, for my mom. I will move forward, and no matter what happens, I will honor his memory." Miguel was in the center of the city, his heart still heavy with the loss of his father, João. The pain he felt seemed endless. Each step he took felt harder than the last, and every memory of his father cut through him like a sharp blade. But there was something in his mind, a quiet strength, telling him that he needed to move forward. He had to fight, not just for himself, but for his father's memory and for the dreams he still carried. That's when he received an unexpected visit. Isabel, that friend of his mother's, was back. Miguel had only met her a few times throughout his life, but he knew she had been important to Amalia at a crucial moment. Isabel was there to give him a chance he didn't even know still existed. "Miguel," Isabel began, her voice soft but firm, "I know you're going through a tough time, but there's something you need to understand. You're not alone on this journey." Miguel looked at her, confused. "What do you mean by that?" Isabel took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. "I knew your mother very well, Miguel, but what you don't know is that she had a musical past you could never have imagined. She gave it all up for you, for the family. I know you feel like you have nothing left, but your mother was always a great singer, and you have the same spark she had." Isabel's words fell on Miguel like a weight. He had always known his mother was different, but he had never known she had a past in music, something she never mentioned. It seemed unreal, but when he looked at Isabel, he saw a sincerity that couldn't be ignored. My mother. She never told me anything about this. Why? Why did she never talk about her past? Miguel asked, trying to understand what was happening. Isabel sighed and sat next to Miguel. Amalia never wanted you to feel pressured to follow a path she had already left behind. She knew the difficulties she would face, knew her life would be different, so she chose to hide it from you. But she has a talent that you inherited, Miguel. And I see in you the same determination I saw in another young man a long time ago, someone who, with my help, achieved everything he wanted. I want to help you, Miguel. I want you to have the chance to be who you were born to be. Miguel was in shock. His mind was full of questions, but the most important was, why was Isabel offering him this help now? And what did it mean for the future? Isabel continued, I know you have doubts, but you have what it takes. I'll help you develop your voice, improve your technique. I'll give you access to people who can take you where you want to go. But before anything else, you need to understand that the talent you have isn't just yours. It comes from something greater, something your mother left behind. And that's why I'm here now, because I see you have what it takes. Miguel looked at Isabel, his mind and heart in turmoil. He wanted to believe her, but he also knew that nothing in his life had been easy. Did he really have what it took? Could he overcome all the adversities and achieve his dreams, just as his mother never had the chance to? I don't know what to think right now, Isabel. I don't know if I can do this without my dad. He always believed in me. And now that he's gone, I feel lost. Isabel placed a hand on Miguel's shoulder. Your father always believed in you, Miguel, and that's the strength you'll need. It's not about being perfect or about not having flaws. It's about continuing, even when everything seems to be falling apart. You don't have to do this alone. I'm here to help you, but the decision is yours. What do you want for your life? Miguel looked at Isabel, her figure becoming clearer in his mind. She was the key he needed to unlock the next phase of his journey. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but he also knew that this opportunity was unique. Perhaps it was the last chance he would have to fulfill the promise he made to his father. With a deep sigh, Miguel looked at Isabel and said, I accept. I'll move forward. I'll fight for this dream, for my father's memory, for my mother. I'll do whatever it takes. Isabel smiled. Then, let's begin. The stage was lit, and the audience crowded into their seats, eager for the big performance. Miguel felt his heart pounding, nervousness overtaking his body. He had been through so much, the death of his father, the revelation of his mother's past, the hardships and obstacles that seemed to appear at every step. But that night, he knew it was all part of his journey. He was no longer the insecure boy ashamed of his origins. Now he was there to fulfill his promise, to become who he had always been meant to be. He looked at Isabel backstage. She gave him an encouraging smile, a gesture that, though simple, meant the world to him. She believed in him, and he believed in her. All he had to do was sing. When the presenter announced his name, Miguel stepped onto the stage with firm steps, but his eyes were clouded with emotion. He couldn't help it. In his mind, the images of his father, his mother, and everything he had overcome were there. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and then began to sing. The first note came out shy, but soon his voice loosened, strong and full of passion. He wasn't just singing for the audience, but for his father, who was with him spiritually, and for his mother, who had never given up on him. The music was his way of connecting with everything he had lost, and, at the same time, with everything he still had: talent, love, and hope. The music, like a gentle wind, filled the room. The people in the audience sat in silence, completely absorbed by the intensity of his performance. Miguel wasn't just singing, he was living the music, letting his soul shine through every word, every melody. He was giving everything he had, and that was more than enough. Isabel watched, her eyes filled with tears. She knew this moment would be decisive, not only for Miguel but also for her. He was surpassing all expectations, and when the last note was sung, the silence in the audience was absolute. For a brief second, it seemed time had stopped. Then the explosion of applause was overwhelming. Here's the translation. Miguel stood still on stage, his breath heavy, his eyes welling up. The audience applauded him standing, and he finally felt recognized. More than that, he felt he had accomplished a mission to honor his father and fulfill the dream that had seemed impossible. After the performance, Miguel was taken to the backstage, where Isabel and other professionals were waiting for him. A well-dressed man with a serious expression approached him. He was an important music agent, someone who had already heard about his performance before the show. He looked at Miguel with admiration. "You've got something rare, kid. Not just talent, but the passion, the truth in your music. If you're willing to work hard, I can help you get where you deserve." Miguel looked at Isabel, who just smiled, satisfied with what she already knew. He then looked at the agent and, with a confidence he hadn't had before, responded, "I'm ready. Let's do this." In the following days, Miguel began working with the agent and other renowned musicians. Things started happening quickly. He recorded his first songs, performed in studios, and even appeared on TV shows. The fame, which had seemed a distant dream, was now within his reach. But above all, he felt that he was finally in the right place, doing what he truly loved. Isabel continued to be his mentor, helping him refine his voice, understand the ups and downs of the music industry, and most importantly, helping him stay true to who he was. A simple kid with a big dream and a desire to transform his family's life. Months later, Miguel returned to his hometown, where it all began. He performed in the main square, now in front of a much larger crowd than before. But, looking at the audience, he didn't think about fame, contracts, or money. He looked at his mother, Amalia, who smiled proudly, and at the people who had always believed in him. And it was there, in front of everyone who knew him, that Miguel realized true wealth wasn't in the fame he had earned. It wasn't in packed performances or multi-million-dollar contracts. True wealth was in the love, the people he helped, and in his father's legacy. Miguel's music was no longer just a way to reach his dreams. It was now the way to honor the people he loved, to give his mother a better life, and above all, to fulfill a promise he made when he was still a boy in old clothes with a huge dream. And as he sang his last song that night, Miguel knew, without a doubt, that he had found his true voice. It wasn't just the music he sang, but the life he had created with all its struggles and victories. And so ends the moving journey of Miguel, a young man who, with hard work, love and faith, managed to transform his life and keep the promise he made to his father. He taught us that, no matter how difficult the obstacles, true wealth lies in the people we love and our roots. Miguel became a star, but his greatest prize was being able to care for his mother and honor his father's legacy. He never forgot where he came from, and that made him even stronger. If you were moved by this story of overcoming adversity, don't forget to like this video. Leave your comment below about what you liked the most about Miguel's journey. Do you think he made the right decisions on his path to fame? How do you think Isabel's support was crucial for him? Share your thoughts in the comments. Oh, and if you want to see more stories like this with emotional twists, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any videos. With every new content, we'll bring more stories of ordinary people overcoming great challenges and fulfilling their dreams. Tell us too, do you believe true success is just about fame and money, or is it more about love and family, like Miguel discovered? Don't forget to answer in the comments. We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you for watching until the end, and see you in the next video, filled with emotion and inspiring stories.